Hey, Danny here from podcasterstories.com, and today I just want to have a quick look at one of the questions that you see in a lot of Facebook groups for podcasters, as well as, search terms on Google, etc. And that's what makes good podcast download numbers. You might be looking for, say, sponsors or advertisers, and you want to know what makes a good download number. And for me, that's kind of asking the wrong question, because as you see here by the search results, you can get averages to say, okay, most successful podcasts have around 50,000 downloads in only 30 days, etc. And that puts you in the top 1%, 5%. But that's sort of missing the bigger picture about niches and what the topic's about and how engaged that audience is for these downloads, etc. So what I wanted to look at was some of the numbers that you can look at when you're looking to see, what are good numbers when it comes to growth for your podcast. So I'm just going to log into my Captivate screen. And Captivate's my podcast host, and full disclaimer, I'm a member of the Captivate team, but I was a really happy customer, and still am, of the Captivate podcast host solution for about 2 years before I joined the Captivate team. So anyway, this is the quick dashboard that you get greeted with when you log into your Captivate account, and it gives you a nice snapshot of your podcast performance at the moment. So as you can see, this gives me downloads overview for today, yesterday, last 7 days, 28, 90, all time, as well as download averages. And it also gives me how my latest episodes are doing at the moment. Now, you can look at this and you can see that, okay, I have 14 today, 41 downloads yesterday, and 118 in the last 7 days. And across here, it gives me the averages. So you can already see that on download averages, I normally get 10 per day. I had 14 today and 41 yesterday, so that's higher than the averages. I normally get 69 downloads per week. Last 7 days, I've had 118 downloads. For 28-day average, I do 274. The last 28 days, I do 567. And the last 90 days, I average 1,005. But the last 90 days here, I've had 1,586 downloads. So you can see, compared to my download averages, my actual downloads are growing and going in an upwards direction, which is good. But if I jump over to my main analytics screen, and what I love about Captivate, they really dig deep in the analytics for you. With the analytics now open, I can look at unique listeners as well as my downloads. So for example, my unique listeners, which is really, unique listeners are the ones that you want to look at if you want to sort of gauge the engagement and the loyalty of your listeners for your podcast, because this will take one listen. If you look it up here, for example, it's defined as a listener from the same IP address and the same device within the presented time frame. And this is a good way of estimating the number of people downloading your show, and it adheres to the IAB version 2 guidelines. So you can look at my unique listeners, and I had 8 today so far, 34 yesterday, 73 in the last week, 299, 671, and 12,000, I wish, 1,251. Now, what you want to be doing here is look at your unique listeners to the relevant downloads for that time frame. So I had unique 8 for today, 14 for today downloads. So I'm roughly getting about 1 and 2, listens per episode. You got 34 unique listeners yesterday to 41 downloads. So that was a really good ratio there. 73 unique listeners in the last 7 days to 118. So again, you can look and compare, the unique listeners to the ratio of downloads. And if you get over that sort of sweet 50%, 1 and 2 sweet spot, that's a really good, gauge for you to look at. There's a little bit of work here on the last 90 days and all time that I need to do. But given that I know that my podcast downloads and my listens and my unique listeners are all trending upwards, I would expect to see, if I checked in on this in a month's time, that this would be different in a ratio compared to the 90 days here, and this would also be different from the ratio to the all-time here, from unique listeners to downloads. And one more, just looking at the rolling 12 months so far. So this is when my podcast started, so it's back in April 2020, and it started off, it's okay. It's got reasonable listens for a new podcast, but nothing spectacular. And you can see that from September onwards, it's really gauging upwards. It's trending upwards. December was an amazing month. January, not too bad. And I am trending at the moment to at least meet the December listens with my February ones. In December, I got 553 downloads. This month so far, I'm sitting at 543. So if you look, if your host offers this, then you can look at this data. If not, come over to Captivate. But if you look at the rolling 12 months, it's just a nice quick way to see, okay, it is. If I put a line here, I could see this is all trending upwards, which is all I want to look at. And that ties back into these numbers here, where I'm looking at, comparing the averages to the previous 7 days or the previous 28 days. And as long as the averages are lower than what I'm currently trending at, that's a good number for me. And that's something that you want to look at. Instead of worrying about, did I get 10,000 downloads? Can I now get all these sponsors? Can I do X, Y, Z? Look at the growth of your podcast. See how it's comparing, to when you first started. Do monthly check-ins or quarterly check-ins and just compare your growth that way. And that will give you a really good idea as to how your podcast is actually looking. And that will allow you to then go out to sponsors and advertisers. And even if you don't have the 10, 20, 50,000 downloads, you can show that your podcast is on a constant trajectory upwards. You have a very engaged audience, and that's far more attractive to advertisers and sponsors than getting a bunch of downloads that may not even be listened to. Anyway, I hope this helped and lets you sort of get a good idea as to what numbers to look for. Until the next time, take care and stay safe.